Warning, this contains frank discussion of post-traumatic stress disorder and possible sexual abuse. Please, skip this one if you are sensitive to that sort of thing. I swear you will not miss much if you do. Seriously, click off and don't purposely trigger yourself. For the first time in years, Rain was beginning to feel like a person rather than a pawn. Especially on days like this, when actual progress had been made with the council. Rebuilding after Bellows was complicated business, of course, and there were a number of highly talented people seated around Rain at the moment, each with differing opinions and experiences. I didn't expect that to work, Darius said in a low voice from beside them. Though they'd been focusing on the physical aspect of their situation for a long time, an hour ago Darius had finally brought up reorganizing and funding therapists, as an offhand comment. Much to Rain's shock, every single witch and demon in the room had agreed, for the first time ever. It's good that it did, Rain said, resting their cheek against their hand. I think everyone could use it at this point. It should be a top priority, under housing, re-establishing trade, and attempting to remove coven marks. Oh, I know. I just didn't think we'd ever see this lot unanimously agree on anything. Darius turned his head as his name was called, giving Rain a nod and walking off. Rain tapped their fingers against their knee. They had already finished most of their work for the day, and their presence there was just a formality at that hour. There was always extra work to be done, though. They hurried home as soon as they could, an extra bounce in their steps. Many of the buildings that had been damaged were in the process of being restored now. The systems they had helped put into place were able to provide resources for many people whose lives had been torn apart. On top of all that, the marketplace had reopened a month ago, and the general economy was beginning to strengthen again. Things weren't great, per se, when were they ever? But they were getting better. Also, Rain was getting better. They were beginning to come to terms with what they had suffered under the former emperor. They could look in mirrors again without that squirming disgust in their stomach when they viewed the scars under their eyes. And the nightmares they had been frequently experiencing had started to dwindle, especially when they slept curled up at Ida's side. Rain! Rain! Over here! They turned their head as they heard Luz's voice, spotting the girl after a few seconds. She had a bag slung over her shoulder and was standing near the marketplace, Hunter at her side. Hello. What are you doing? They made their way over to her. Ida told me to try and sell some stuff. She swung the bag around for emphasis. Rain decided not to ask what was in it, for a number of reasons, the first and foremost being the mischievous grin on Luz's face. I brought Hunter with me. He looked like he wanted to come. You dragged me out of my house. Hunter said. When are you going to be home? Rain started, then paused as there was commotion from the marketplace. Two of the other council members walked by, Terra Snapdragon in between them. The council had decided not to officially take anyone into custody after Bellows' defeat, even his most loyal supporters. But some people required constant supervision. This is your second warning, Snapdragon. The woman to her left said. You're not to try and escape supervision again, or there will be consequences. Terra didn't respond, turning her head to the side. Then she locked eyes with Rain. They could barely breathe as her gaze met theirs. Those eyes had been there during some of the worst moments in Rain's life. They were cruel and hard despite her attempts to make them appear inviting. They'd been trained on Rain with interest since they were just Luz's age. Rain couldn't move as everything that had happened flashed through their mind again. They continued staring at the blank space Terra left behind as she and the two watching her moved on. A familiar, Crushing haze settled over their thoughts and in their chest, choking them. Tara had never succeeded with her attempt at actual mind control. But in a way, after everything that had happened, she controlled their thoughts now. Guys, come on. Hunter waved a hand in front of Rain's face, and they finally recognized their surroundings again. Luz had also briefly frozen upon seeing the woman. Sorry, Hunter, Rain rubbed their eyes. She was gone. They were okay. They repeated it to themselves over and over again in their head. Are you two okay? He asked. Yep. We'll be fine, Luz said, lifting the bag she had been carrying back up. Want to finish what we were doing? Hunter nodded. By Rain, I'll be home at some point. They walked back to the owl house, raising an eyebrow as they realized Hootie was in his original place on the door. That meant that Lilith was likely there, and Ida would be occupied for the afternoon. Hi, Rain. Hootie squirmed back and forth upon seeing them. Want me to tell you a super special secret? No thank you. Rain opened the door and went inside. They didn't think about seeing Tara until later, once Luz was back and they were making dinner with her, and Lilith had left. Luz and Rain had been unanimously voted the ideal dinner-making team by the 4 residents of the Owl House a little while ago. It wasn't that difficult of a vote. King got a little too excited in the kitchen to cook no matter who he was with. Rain and Ida became too competitive when they tried to do it together, and Ida encouraged Luz to try pretty much every idea that came to her mind while cooking, just for the heck of it. Most of those ideas ended in flames. Rain and Luz worked well together. They listened to Luz talk about her day while cutting up meat beside her. Thankfully, Luz never asked about the specific ingredients they used, unless she was concerned they would upset her stomach. Most human cooking was different, to say the least, or so Luz had said. We're making 2 different types, right? Luz asked, jumping up to sit on the counter and jumping down after Rain gave her a pointed look. MHM. One with all of the intended spices, for you and me, and 1 boring bland one for Ida and King. Cool! Luz ran off to pour drinks for everyone, Rain lifting up their cup early. They hadn't had an opportunity to drink anything that day and their throat was dry. They held the cup to their lips to take a sip. Their hand tensed. An image of Tara flashed through their mind. The cup shattered in their grasp, some of the glass cutting into their hand while the rest fell to the floor. Oh, Luz looked down at the mess once she was back in the room. I can clean it up if you want. No, finish with dinner, I'll clean it, Rain said, clenching and unclenching the hand with the cuts. It seemed fine. They cleaned the glass from the floor and helped Luz set the table, getting another cup after and trying to take a sip again. Their throat felt like it had closed up. What if Tara had escaped from supervision? What if she was there right now? They'd already done the mind control thing once. The thought of it made them want to tear at the scars on their face and at the scars further down their body that no one but Ida had seen. They dumped out the cup and went to sit and eat. Hello, Sprout. Rain was 14 years old again, and she was standing in front of them. I always knew you were special, from the moment I laid eyes on you. Her fingers burned against their chin as she stroked it. Drink this. She had a cup that wasn't right. That cup hadn't come until Rain was an adult leading a revolution. But she still had one. Right now. When they were at their smallest. They shivered. Rain's eyes shot open and they sat up in there in Ida's nest. Ida shifted in her sleep from beside them, her arm flopped at a strange angle over her eyes. They got out of the nest, their legs shaking. Their throat was burning and there was a dull ache in their head. They needed water. They crossed their arms to their chest and left the room. Her voice was still ringing in their ears, and her face in their mind as they poured themselves a drink. The image of her grew larger as they held it to their lips. They dumped it out. They could deal with this later. For now, they were going back to bed. They curled back up at Ida's side, slipping into a thankfully dreamless sleep and staying in it for 7 hours. Ida's finger poking their cheek woke them up. They rubbed their eyes, mourning. "Hey," she smiled as they sat up and kissed her cheek. "You good? You usually only wake up after me when you're dying." Just tired, they stood up on unsteady legs. Their head was throbbing worse than it had the other night. "Cool," she said, not believing them one bit. "You should stay home today." "I'm staying home. It's raining, so I can't go bother Lilith and Hootie about construction. I can do all of my work here." "And you need a break." "Right." Ida was in the middle of trying to make her own school. Rain was both immensely interested and quite frightened with the idea. Luz had expressed her own delight on numerous occasions. "I will," Rain decided, wincing at the hoarse quality of their voice. They went downstairs as Ida walked off to find King. They poured themselves yet another drink, whistling into it. They knew it was harmless. Logically, they knew that it had been harmless before they had even whistled into it. But it wasn't about what they knew or didn't know. It was about her face, flashing in front of their eyes, waiting for them to take a sip. They let out a growl of frustration and dumped the water out, sitting down on the floor with their back against the wall. If they didn't drink, they would die. They knew that. But they couldn't bring themselves to do it anyway. They sat there for what felt like hours, Ida finally coming down the stairs. "So, turns out a criminal record isn't the best thing to have when you're trying to start a school. I should be able to bypass some of the paperwork though, so, she looked down at them, then sat down beside them. "You okay?" Briefly, Rain considered lying. But they trusted Ida, even if they did feel guilty when they shared information about their own troubles to someone who already had a host of her own. "I can't drink," they said, rubbing their eyes. "You can't drink? What?" Ida tilted her head. "I saw Tara in the marketplace, and now whenever I try I can only see her." "Oh. When was the last time you drank?" 24 hours ago. "A little over." "I'll be right back." Ida stood up and walked off, Rain pulling their knees to their chest and staring at the wall. Things had been going so well. And their stupid sensitive mind just had to screw things up. Ida returned a half an hour later, a basket in her arms. She sat back beside them, passing them a handful of small blackberries. "Here. Souseberries. Lilith and I used to throw them at each other when we were bored and it was hot out. They contain a crazy amount of water. Enough to sustain a person without any actual liquid for a while. And enough to leave dear Lily's hair soaking wet, because I have superior aim." "I've heard of them," Rain said, holding one up. They considered it for a moment, then put it in their mouth. It was practically tasteless, but bearable enough. "Yeah. Just eat a ton of them and you'll be okay while you work through the issue. Oh, there's a small chance that it may make your teeth glow in the dark, by the way." She wrapped her arm around their shoulders, then laid her head against them. It was a bit of an awkward bend, since she was taller than them, but she made it work. "What's on your mind?" she asked, tapping her fingers back against the wall. Rain shrugged. Everything was just good for a while. I didn't think it would go back. Oh, yeah, setbacks are annoying. Ida stretched out her arm, but they happen. Hey, I heard you and the rest of the council are working on reorganizing therapists. I know we've been talking about it for the kids, but you should go too. It might help with all of this. Fine. If you go too, Rain said. I already sorted out my problem. One problem. You sorted out one problem, Ida. We'll both go, fine. You just make sure to get on organizing them. Ida kissed their cheek, Rain smiling. They were no longer overwhelmingly thirsty now that they had eaten the berries. They sat together on the floor in silence while they waited for King to come down. Rain felt the slightest bit of frustration twist in their stomach, because they had both come so far, and yet they still had so far to go. But even though things weren't perfect, they always felt a little more manageable with Ida's arm tucked around them and her head on their shoulder. Notes. Thank you for reading. Quick note, I do not know if it's actually possible for people to safely only take in water from food for some time. I'd assume it would be because some animals do it, but don't try it,